Here is a video where I sort of take the gloves off as it relates to the Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris issue. I received a message or a response from one of my earlier videos, and this guy makes a statement that Chuck Norris would mop the floor up with Bruce Lee had they got into a sparring match or session. That's honorable that he has that much confidence in Chuck Norris. That is admirable. But I want to say this. I have never understood why people have been so caught up in this idea of who can beat who, who's better than who, or who can kick whose butt or whose butt you have kicked in time past. All of that is an inflated ego from my perspective. Now, I've said in time past, and I'm saying it again, every time that Chuck Norris was in a national setting at a talk show where he was being interviewed about Bruce Lee, when Bruce Lee's name came up and they asked the question about them sparring, Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris always went to the fact that he was the world champion. He always switched the script and began to talk about, at the time I was the world champion, and then he would give sort of a smirk when he was responding. And then he made a statement at one time that Bruce and I never went there. He didn't want to go there and I didn't want to go there. We're talking about sparring. Okay? Now, that is what caused me to make the one video where I labeled it, Chuck Norris never respected Bruce Lee. That's the reason why, because every time Bruce Lee's name was brought up in comparison to him and Bruce Lee in a sparring match, he never gave Bruce Lee credit. That's it, and that's all, ladies and gentlemen. That was the whole premise of that particular video that I did. Now, as far as Chuck Norris's success as a martial arts figure and as an actor, he would have never become as famous as he did had it not been for the legendary Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was famous when Chuck Norris was allowed to play the role in Return of the Dragon. Bruce Lee was already famous. Chuck Norris was not. So, was Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris friends? I believe so. But in Chuck Norris's mind, Bruce Lee was an opportunity for him to try to catapult himself to stardom like Bruce Lee, even beyond Bruce Lee. He had an agenda. He didn't have to tell anybody that. It's obvious that he had an agenda, and his interviews are evidence of that, and how when he's asked about Bruce Lee's ability, he never just flats out says Bruce Lee was very formidable. He has never said that to this very day. Now, he may have digressed a little bit, and he might insert from time to time in the past year or so that Bruce Lee would have done this and he would have done that if he was in the MMA and things like that. But it's hard for him to do that. It's always been hard for him to do that because he doesn't want Bruce Lee to have the credit over him. He's always been that way, in my estimation. Now, getting to the statement that the guy made about Chuck Norris mopping up the floor with Bruce Lee had they got into a real squabble, so to speak. You heard this from me, Grandmaster Stroud, also known as Brother Teacher, to you. This is for the official record, and I'm done with this. If Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee had ever had a serious sparring match, Chuck Norris would be picking himself up off of the floor, and Norris knew this. Not to mention, if they had ever had a serious fight, Bruce Lee would have destroyed Chuck Norris. We all know this. Whether people want to admit it that are pro Chuck Norris fans, because they're just pro Chuck Norris fans, we all know that Bruce Lee would have destroyed a Chuck Norris. And most of the martial arts world at the time knew it as well. That is why these American guys that are coming out of the woodwork over the past 5 and 10 years saying Bruce Lee was not a great fighter and Bruce Lee was just an actor, but they never said anything during the time that Bruce Lee was living. Go figure. And I wonder why. I wonder why. Why didn't they say that crap then when he was living? Why is it after the man has been dead all of these years and all of a sudden, you know, he wasn't as good as they say he was? We're talking about a man who devoted his life to perfection in the art of fighting. We're not talking about a man who devoted his life to sport karate. Not talking about it, because there's a distinction between the two. There's a very fine line between sport and real fighting. That's it. And that's the truth. That's the whole truth. Chuck Norris probably will never, ever give Bruce Lee the credit that he deserves. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. But we all know. We all know the truth. What's your viewpoint? Brother Teacher out.